I gave them everything. My love, my time, my life. And when my husband, their father, was dying, I asked my children for help. Their response? It shattered me. They weren't there when I needed them most. And that was the moment I realized nobody was coming to save me. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button and join us, where betrayal, drama, and hidden truths unfold. Also, let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Charles was lying in the bed, barely conscious, his breath shallow and labored. The cancer had taken its toll on him, on both of us, really. I had been here beside him for weeks, trying to keep the house running, taking care of him, but everything felt like it was crumbling. I thought about the children. I hadn't called them for help until now. I was stubborn, I suppose. I wanted to do it myself, like I always did. But this was too much. I couldn't pretend I was okay anymore. The nights spent awake, listening to Charles struggle to breathe. The mornings when he didn't even recognize me. How much longer could I keep going? Mom, I'm trying to finish up this semester. I really can't just leave everything. Emily's voice crackled through the phone. She sounded distant, her frustration palpable even across the line. I don't understand why Dad can't just, it's been so long. It feels like everyone is expecting me to drop everything. But I have my own life too. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the wave of emotion that threatened to spill out. I understood Emily's frustration. She was in the middle of finishing her degree, and I knew how hard she had worked for it. But there was something about her words, something cold that hit me deeper than I expected. I need you, I wanted to say. I need you to be here just for a while. I know, sweetie. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm just so tired, Emily. I need someone here with me. Your father isn't going to make it, and I can't do this alone. There was a long silence on the other end. Then finally she spoke again, softer this time. I'm sorry, Mom, but you've been handling everything for so long. Maybe you should look into hospice care or something. They could help. Hospice care. I hadn't even thought about it. The thought of someone else coming in to care for him felt like giving up on him. It felt like I was giving up on him. I wasn't ready to let go, but I knew she was right. I knew it was all too much. I glanced at Charles. He was drifting in and out of sleep, his frail hand resting on the blankets. My heart ached for him, for us. I had never imagined this would be our reality. Please, Emily, please just come home, just for a little while. I need you, I pleaded, my voice shaking. I'll see what I can do, okay? But don't expect too much. I've got a lot going on, she replied before quickly hanging up. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand, a mixture of anger, frustration, and helplessness flooding through me. I wasn't angry at her. I understood that she had her own life, but something inside me cracked, something I didn't even know was fragile. I had always been the one to hold things together. I had been the mother who sacrificed, the wife who kept the house in order, the one who made sure everything worked even when my own heart was breaking. I had been the one everyone turned to when things got hard. But now, when it mattered most, my own children, my own flesh and blood were telling me to figure it out on my own. I knew it wasn't fair to expect them to drop everything for me, but I was their mother, and in my deepest moments of need, that connection, that bond, should have been enough for them to at least try. As the hours passed, I found myself sitting in the dim light of the living room, Charles's shallow breaths the only sound in the house. I thought about the years spent raising Emily and her younger brother Daniel, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the constant worry and responsibility. I thought about how I had been there for them, always there, no matter what. But now, when I needed them most, I was left alone in the quiet of this house, clinging to the remnants of a life that was slipping away. The phone rang again. I looked at the caller ID, Daniel. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately picked up. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. I'll try to come down, but I've got work and the kids to think about. I can't just leave everything, okay? I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Of course, I thought. You've got your own life too. Don't worry about it, Daniel, I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. I'll manage. Just take care of yourself. The words felt hollow, empty. After the call, I stood there in the silence, my body aching from the weight of everything. I felt like I was drowning in this house, drowning in the reality of it all. Charles, sick and dying, my children absent, and me standing at the edge of it all, alone. I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall freely now. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just heartbroken. For the first time in my life, I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough to keep my family together, to make everything okay, and the ache in my chest was unbearable. I never wanted to be the martyr. That's not how I saw myself, at least. But when you've spent your life putting everyone else first, it becomes hard to see any other way of living. Even as a young woman, I took on the world's responsibilities, my family's expectations, the weight of every role I had to play, and wore them like armor. But now, looking back, I see that armor has been worn thin, and it's too late to take it off. I think I started losing pieces of myself when Charles was diagnosed. The cancer, it came so suddenly, as things like this do. One day, he was just tired, then a cough, then a hospital visit, then a diagnosis, and just like that, everything shifted. I remember sitting beside him in that sterile hospital room, holding his hand, listening to the doctor speak, but I couldn't focus. I could only think about how much I had to do now, how much I would have to take on. The thought of asking anyone for help never crossed my mind. I wasn't that person. I was the one who made everything happen. I always had been. It wasn't always easy. I sacrificed a lot for my children. I remember staying up late every night, studying, preparing meals, handling the bills. While Charles worked long hours, I became the backbone of the household, the quiet force that held everything together. I didn't ask for recognition, didn't need the praise. My children were everything. They needed me, and I gave them all I had without hesitation. But somewhere along the way, somewhere between managing soccer practices, dance recitals, and parent-teacher conferences, I lost pieces of myself. The dream I had of becoming an artist was tucked away in a drawer, collecting dust. I stopped painting after Emily was born, thinking it would be selfish to pursue something for myself. And then Daniel came along, and everything became about them, their future, their need. I remember the days when I would stand in front of the mirror, wondering if I still knew the person who stared back at me. I felt disconnected, but I didn't have time to stop and wonder. There was always something more important, always another sacrifice to make. And now, with Charles's illness, it felt like that same pattern had returned, but this time it was different. The exhaustion, the endless appointments, the pain that I couldn't fix, it wore on me, it wore on my soul. Yet, despite everything, I never even considered reaching out to my children, not until now, because I thought they would be there, just like I had always been. But they weren't, not the way I needed them to be. As the days turned into weeks, I watched Charles fade. He was still there, physically, but the man I had married, his sharp wit, his dry humor was slipping away. Piece by piece, I would sit beside him, stroking his hand, trying to find some semblance of the life we had shared, but it was all slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't hold on tight enough. I had been the one to stand by him through everything, the late nights, the tough times, the hard choices. I had stood by him when he had lost his job, when we were forced to downsize, when our savings dried up. I had always believed that together, we could face anything. But this was different. This was a battle I couldn't fight alone. And yet, as I looked at him, I realized I was alone, completely and utterly alone. I had always been the strong one, the pillar of the family. But now, I felt like I was crumbling, like the weight of everything was too much for me to bear. The children I had sacrificed so much for, they were no longer the bright-eyed, hopeful souls I had raised. Emily, busy with her life, her degree, her career, she didn't have time for this. And Daniel, with his own family, his own responsibilities, had barely been home. They weren't coming back, not in the way I needed them to, and it hurt. It hurt more than I had ever imagined, more than I could ever put into words. I started to wonder if this was all I would ever be, someone who gave, gave, and gave, only to be left empty. I was no longer the vibrant woman who had dreamed of a life outside of the family's needs. I was now just a caretaker, a shadow, a woman defined by her sacrifices and nothing else. I was bitter, and I was angry, not just at my children, but at myself, at the choices I had made that had led me to this point. I had always placed them first. Always, and now when I needed them most, I was left wondering if any of it had mattered. The bitterness grew, slowly at first, a crack in my heart, a small seed that bloomed over time. I wasn't sure when the anger turned into resentment, but it did. I began to think that maybe, just maybe, I deserved more than this. I deserved to be seen, to be appreciated, not just as their mother but that was a thought I kept buried deep beneath the weight of my responsibilities. I had learned to bury things for so long, to hide them behind the masks of motherhood and wife and caretaker. The resentment toward my children lingered, like a shadow just out of reach. I wanted to confront them, to make them see me, to make them realize how much I had given up for them, but I couldn't. Not yet. The pain was still too raw, still too fresh. Instead, I just sat in the quiet of that house, listening to Charles's breath, counting the seconds between each one, waiting for the moment when it would all come crashing down. There's something about the silence that hits hardest when you're trapped in it. The stillness of a house that used to echo with laughter, arguments, the sound of children running up and down the stairs, now empty, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the click of the clock. I spent the days looking at the clock, waiting for time to move faster. It had become my enemy. Every hour that passed seemed like a lifetime. I would sit with Charles, trying to make him comfortable, holding his hand, even though he didn't always know I was there. His eyes, once full of life and humor, were now glassy. I would talk to him, telling him about the children, trying to fill the space with words, but it always felt like I was talking to a ghost of the man I once knew, the man who had stood beside me through everything. I hadn't asked for much from him, but now, as he lay there fading away, I realized how much I had taken him for granted. The loneliness was suffocating. The moments spent waiting for Emily or Daniel to return home felt endless. I had called Emily again, this time just to check in, hoping to hear some semblance of concern in her voice, but instead it felt like another exchange of words, like a distant formality. "I'm really busy. I have a huge exam coming up, and I just can't keep dropping everything," Emily had said. Her tone was softer this time, but there was no urgency, no empathy. "You said the same thing last week, Emily. I need help here. I need you," I pressed, my voice rising before I could stop it. She sighed, a sound of exhaustion that made my heart sink further. "I know, Mom. I know. I'll try to come by this weekend, but I can't promise anything." That was it. That was the most I was going to get. The promise of maybe a weekend visit. I knew it was selfish to expect more, but in that moment, I couldn't help but feel the depth of my own loss. I didn't call Daniel after that. I didn't know what I'd say. He had called me earlier, but the conversation had been even worse. He wasn't angry, he wasn't dismissive, but his tone was distant, as if he had already accepted that this was just part of life. That part of life, the part where people die and you move on, no matter how hard it is. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know things are tough. I just don't know what to do. I've got a lot on my plate too. I'm trying to keep things together with the kids and work. I can't just drop everything right now." His voice trailed off, and I could hear the discomfort in his words. "I understand," I said, though I didn't understand how he couldn't see how much I needed him. Just call when you can." It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the way he said them. That disconnection, that resignation. The truth was, I had never asked for help before. I had never needed to. But now, with Charles slipping away, with everything falling apart, I was finally asking. And yet, somehow it felt like I was asking too much. The tension in the air became unbearable. Each time I glanced at the door, I half expected one of them to walk through, but they did. The calls came in, but the warmth I once felt in them, those moments of connection and support, was gone. It wasn't that they didn't care. I knew they loved me in their own way. I knew they weren't purposefully ignoring me. But there was something about the way they had built their own lives, their own separate worlds, that made me feel invisible, like I no longer had the power to reach them, to pull them back into the reality of our shared life. It was as if they had become so wrapped up in their own struggles, their own responsibilities, that they couldn't see the pain in my eyes. I was tired of being the one to carry it all. I had carried so much for so long that I didn't know how to ask for help anymore. It had always been my role to be the strong one, the dependable one, but now, that strength felt like a burden, and as much as I hated to admit it, I couldn't keep carrying it. I couldn't keep holding everything together, not when I was unraveling inside. The day came when I finally broke. I had spent the entire morning with Charles, watching him struggle to breathe. He had been trying to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I could feel his frustration, his helplessness, and it mirrored my own. I was helpless too. I had gone into the kitchen to make a cup of tea when the thought hit me. Why not confront them? Why not force them to see? I was exhausted from waiting for them to figure it out on their own. Maybe I needed to be more direct, more demanding. Maybe it was time to stop asking so politely, to stop being so understanding. I had been patient for too long. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling slightly, and dialed Emily's number. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. Emily, I need you here. Your father is dying. This is not just about me, it's about your family. I don't know how much longer I can keep going like this. My voice cracked, and for the first time in a long time, I let my vulnerability show. There was silence on the other end for a long moment, and then finally she spoke. Mom, I don't know what to say. I can't just come home every time you call. I've got my life too. The words stung, more than I had expected. The conversation ended quickly after that. I put the phone down, but the weight of those words lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just the call. It was the realization that no matter how much I had given, no matter how much I had sacrificed, I was never going to be enough for them. That was the turning point for me. I couldn't just keep doing this. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of everyone else's priorities. I sat there, in the silence that followed, staring at the phone in my hand. Enough, I thought. Enough of being the one who always gives. Enough of waiting for them to come around. Enough of pretending I'm okay when I'm not. I took a deep breath and stood up. It was time to take control. I couldn't do this alone anymore. But I also couldn't keep giving pieces of myself away, hoping someone would notice. It was time to face the truth, even if it meant confronting the people I loved most. The floor beneath me creaked as I took a step, the sound almost too loud in the quiet of the room. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me, suffocating me. My chest was tight, the weight of all the words I had yet to say, all the things I had kept inside for so long. I walked over to the window, my fingers brushing against the cold glass. Outside, the world was still turning. People were going about their lives, living their days, unaware of the storm swirling inside of me. How could everything be so normal for them, when my world was falling apart? I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me. For just a moment it was all I could hear. The quiet breath of the house, the distant hum of life outside, and in that silence my own thoughts crashed together like waves. Why hadn't they come? Why hadn't they seen it? I stood there, lost in the thought, trying to make sense of it all. The children I raised, the children who once looked at me with love, with need, now nothing but distant echoes. I had given them everything. My time, my energy, my heart. And now they couldn't even come home. I turned away from the window, my heart heavy. My legs felt like they might give way beneath me, but I didn't let myself fall. I couldn't. Not now, not when I had finally made the decision. It was time to face them. But how? How do you face the people you've spent a lifetime loving, a lifetime giving to, and realize that they've been too wrapped up in their own lives to see the cracks in yours? How do you say, "I need you," without sounding weak, without sounding like a failure? I closed my eyes again, swallowing hard. The tears I had been holding back threatened to break free, but I couldn't let them. Not yet. I wouldn't break. I wouldn't let this moment be defined by my pain. But God, how it hurt. I could still hear their voices in my head. Emily's sharp, impatient tone the last time we spoke. "Mom, I have a life of my own. You can't expect me to drop everything." Her words echoed in my ears, replaying again and again, each one a dagger to my heart. And Daniel, oh Daniel, always the quiet one, always the one who thought the answer to everything was just more work. "I'm doing my best, Mom," he had said. "I'm doing everything I can," but his best wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me, it wasn't enough for him. And I had let it go, let it sit in the back of my mind, but no more. I walked slowly toward the phone, my hand shaking as I reached for it. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, making every movement feel like it took a lifetime. The screen lit up as I dialed Emily's number. 1 ring, 2 ring, 3. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I thought for a second that I might not even be able to speak when she picked up, but I couldn't back out now. "Hello?" Her voice was tired, distant. "Emily," I said, my voice steady even though every fiber of my being wanted to break. "I need you here. Your father is dying and I can't do this alone. Not anymore." I heard her hesitate. The sound of papers shuffling. A sigh. "Mom, I told you, I've got so much going on right now. I can't just leave." I held my breath. I could feel the anger building, but I didn't let it spill over. "Not yet." "Is that all I am to you?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "Just a call you make when it's convenient, when you're free." There was silence on the other end. I waited, letting her feel the weight of the question, letting her feel what I had been feeling all this time. The betrayal, the loneliness, the exhaustion of always being the one who gave, the one who held everything together. And still, no one saw her. "I'll try to come by this weekend," she finally said. "I'll see what I can do. See what I can do." Those words cut deep, deeper than I ever thought they could, and I didn't say another word. I couldn't. My throat was too tight, my mind too consumed with the crushing weight of it all. I hung up before she could say anything else. I didn't want to hear the excuses anymore. I let the phone fall to the table, my hands shaking as I tried to breathe. The tears finally came, then silent, uncontrollable. They weren't for Emily, they weren't for Daniel, they were for me, for all the years I had spent pouring myself out, and not asking for a damn thing in return. But there was something else too, something inside me that refused to stay broken. I had spent too long waiting for them to save me, to come through, but it was time to stop waiting. It was time to take control. I wasn't just going to sit here and wait for them to wake up. I couldn't. I had waited long enough. This was my moment. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. It was time to let go of the past. Time to stop chasing the approval I'd never gotten. Time to step into a life that didn't revolve around their mistakes. I took a deep breath. I wiped away my tears, stood up, and looked at the door. It was time to move forward. I took a deep breath and stood up. It was time to take control. I couldn't do this alone anymore. But I also couldn't keep giving pieces of myself away, hoping someone would notice. It was time to face the truth, even if it meant confronting the people I loved most. I had spent the last few days hoping that something would change, but nothing did. I couldn't sit back and wait for my children to realize what was happening to their family. I had to make them see. The phone call with Emily had left me feeling hollow. I had tried my best to explain, to make her understand, but all I had gotten was a promise to maybe show up on the weekend. Maybe. The disappointment was a weight in my chest. But there was something else too. I hadn't spoken to Daniel in a few days. After the conversation with Emily, I realized that I had been too focused on her. She was my oldest, the one I had always expected to have more responsibility, but it was Daniel who had been silently carrying a heavy load. For months now he had been working tirelessly to send money home for Charles's treatment. I knew he had been under a lot of stress, trying to balance his own life, his job, and his responsibilities. But he had stepped up, sending what he could when he could. He hadn't once complained about it, hadn't once asked for recognition. I knew it was hard for him, but I hadn't realized just how much it was affecting him until now. I picked up my phone and dialed Daniel's number. It rang once, twice before he picked up. "Mom?" His voice was tired, strained, but there was a warmth in it. "Daniel, I need you here. Please, I said, my voice unsteady. I can't keep doing this alone. Charles, he's getting worse. I need you to be here, to help me. I know, Mom. I know, he said, but his voice sounded far away. I've been trying, but you know how it is. I'm working every day just to send money home. And it's not easy. You know I can't just drop everything. I could hear the frustration in his voice. And I understood it. I did, but the truth was, I couldn't keep carrying everything either. I know you've been working hard, Daniel, I said, my voice breaking. I know, but I can't keep pretending that I'm okay when I'm not. I'm asking for your help, not just money, but your time. I need you here. This isn't just about sending money for treatment anymore. It's about being a family, being there when it matters. There was silence on the other end. I could hear him shifting, like he was trying to figure out what to say. The silence stretched, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I know it's been hard for you, but I've been doing everything I can. The money I send, it's for Dad's treatment, so he can get better. I just can't be there all the time. I've got my own life, my own family, my job. I can't just drop it all, not when everything is riding on this. I felt the weight of his words hit me harder than I expected. I knew he was trying. I knew he was doing what he thought was best, but the truth was, I was beginning to feel like I wasn't enough to warrant his full attention anymore. You're right, I said quietly. You've been doing what you can. I don't want you to feel like I'm blaming you, but Daniel, I need more. I can't keep doing this on my own. I'm sorry, Mom, he said again, and this time I could hear the weariness in his voice. I really am. I'll try to come by when I can, but I can't make promises right now. The call ended with an uncomfortable silence. I sat there, holding the phone in my hands, staring at the screen. Was I being unreasonable? Should I just accept that this was all I was going to get? My heart told me no, but my head told me to be thankful for what I had. I set the phone down, but the emptiness in my chest didn't go away. I thought about Daniel, about all the sacrifices he had made, working long hours to send money home, to make sure Charles had the treatment he needed. He was doing what he could, but in the process he had become distant, and I couldn't blame him. Not really, but it still hurt. Was I wrong for wanting him here? Was I wrong for wanting my family to be there when it mattered? I didn't know anymore. I thought back to all the times I had told both of them, that family comes first. I had raised them with that belief, that no matter what, we would always have each other's backs. But now, I was starting to feel like I had been living in a fairy tale. The reality was, that my children had their own lives. They were adults now. They had responsibilities that I didn't fully understand, things that I couldn't control. But why did that have to mean I had to stand here alone, carrying this weight by myself? I sat in silence, replaying Daniel's words over and over. The guilt started to settle in too. He was sending money. He was doing everything he could. Was that enough? Should it be enough? Should he be blamed for not physically being here? For not being able to drop everything? I knew I wasn't the only one struggling. Daniel had his own battle, but could I keep pretending I was okay with the distance between us? Could I continue to ignore the growing ache inside me? I couldn't keep pretending, not anymore. The silence in the room pressed in on me, suffocating. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in, holding me in place, forcing me to face the truth I had been avoiding for so long. My hands shook as I stood there, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The weight of everything, every word, every conversation I had held back, every moment I had swallowed my pain, was crashing down on me. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't hold it all together. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but instead I stood there, the air thick with unspoken words, the pulse of my heart so loud I was sure it could be heard outside the house. It felt like my body was betraying me, my chest tight, my throat constricted, as if it knew the floodgate was about to open. I looked at the phone, sitting innocently on the table. Emily, Daniel, the people who were supposed to be here, the ones I had carried for years, gave everything for, held up every time they fell. Where are you now? The pain of that question gnawed at me, but I refused to break. I had spent so many years waiting for their love, their attention, their care, but they hadn't come when it mattered. And as much as I hated it, I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't feel the sting of that abandonment. I turned away from the phone, my steps slow, heavy. I could feel the weight of the house on my shoulders. The years of sacrifice buried in the walls, the years of giving, of losing myself for them, for the family I thought we were. But what had I become? A shell, a person defined by what others needed, by what others expect, and in the process, I had forgotten who I was, forgotten the woman I used to be, the woman before the labels, before the roles. I'm not just a mother, I'm not just a wife. I had spent so long waiting for them to see that. But they hadn't, not truly, maybe they never would. The tears came then, hot and painful, streaking down my face. I had been holding them in for too long. I hadn't let myself feel the depth of the pain until now. My chest heaved with each sob, the weight of everything threatening to pull me under. I am not okay. For the first time in so long, I allowed myself to feel it, the hurt, the disappointment, the anger. It was all there. All these raw, unspoken emotions that I had hidden away for so long. I had been too scared to face them, too scared to admit that I wasn't okay, that I couldn't handle it all on my own. But now, I couldn't keep pretending. I sank down onto the couch, my hands clutching the fabric beneath me, grounding myself. The air felt cold around me, but my skin burned with the intensity of what I had been holding in. I had been trying to be strong, I had been trying to keep it all together, but I couldn't, not anymore, and I couldn't keep waiting for someone to come and fix it. I couldn't keep hoping that they would wake up and realize how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed. I was tired of waiting. The tears slowed, but the pain remained. It was like a deep ache that couldn't be soothed, but there was something else rising beneath it. Something more powerful than the grief. Acceptance. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I let go of the weight of my expectations. I had been waiting for my children to save. I had been waiting for them to come back, to fix what had been broken, but they couldn't. They couldn't fix it. Because I wasn't broken. I had been whole all along. I stood up, wiping my face, the motion slow and deliberate. There was a quiet strength in the way my body moved, in the way I embraced the stillness. For so long, I had been living in the noise, in the chaos of trying to keep everything together. But now, in this moment, I realized that the peace I had been searching for didn't lie in their love or their approval. It lay in me. I walked to the window, my gaze falling on the world outside, the sky stretching wide, the leaves swaying gently in the breeze. Life was moving on. The world hadn't stopped, and neither would I. The phone sat on the table, and a part of me wanted to pick it up, to call them, to demand what I had always needed. But then I paused. I didn't need their answers anymore. I didn't need them to save me. I was enough. I turned away from the window, my movements more confident now. For the first time in years I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt light, unburdened. I walked over to Charles' side, his breathing still slow and shallow. He was still here, fighting his own battle, and as much as I wanted to hold on to him, as much as I didn't want to let go, I knew it was time. I knew the moment was coming, and when it did I would be ready, not because I had my children beside me, not because I had anyone else, but because I had. The days blurred together. Each morning, I woke up hoping for a change, a sign that everything might somehow fall into place. But it never came. Charles continued to slip further away, his body growing weaker by the day. The house, once filled with so much life, now felt like a tomb, quiet, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. I spent most of my time beside Charles, holding his hand, trying to find comfort in the fleeting moments of clarity he still had. But even that was becoming harder to hold on to. It had been 2 weeks since I last spoke to Daniel, and I couldn't bring myself to call him again. The conversations always ended the same way. Empty promises, words that meant nothing. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I wasn't sure what I even needed anymore. All I knew was that the distance between us was growing, and with it, my own sense of defeat. I stood by the window one afternoon, watching the world go on outside. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. The world seemed so alive, so vibrant, while I was here, caught in this limbo, waiting for something to change. My life had been defined by waiting, waiting for my children to come around, waiting for things to get better, waiting for Charles to heal. But nothing was happening, nothing was changing. That's when the call came. It wasn't from Daniel or Emily. It wasn't even from one of the many nurses who had been in and out of the house. It was from the hospital. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but there was an underlying tone I couldn't ignore. "Mrs. Caldwell, we've just received an update on your husband's treatment plan. I'm afraid there's been a complication." My stomach twisted into knots. A complication. I didn't want to hear those words. Not now, not when everything felt like it was already slipping through my fingers. "There's been an issue with his medication," the nurse continued. "It seems there was a mistake in the dosage, and it's affecting his treatment. We're doing everything we can to correct it, but I wanted to inform you that it might cause some setbacks in his condition." I could barely process the words. My mind was spinning, racing to understand what she was saying. A mistake, a medical error. How could this happen? How could they let this happen to Charles after everything we'd been through? "I'll need to speak with the doctor," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to understand what this means for him. What are the next steps?" The nurse promised she would have the doctor call me later that day. I ended the call, but the weight of what had just been said lingered in the air. A mistake, a complication. It wasn't supposed to be this way. It couldn't be. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something that I couldn't control. It felt like I had been fighting so hard to keep everything together. But in the end it wasn't up to me. The doctors, the nurses, even my own children, they were all part of this bigger picture, and I was just watching it unfold from the sidelines. I sank into the couch, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. But even as the rage simmered inside me, there was something else, a sense of helplessness that I couldn't ignore. I had spent so long trying to fix everything, trying to make it all right, but I couldn't fix this. I couldn't fix Charles. I couldn't fix my family, and I couldn't fix myself. That's when it hit me. The revelation that I had been avoiding for so long. My children weren't the only ones who had failed me. I had failed myself too. In all the years of giving, of sacrificing, I had neglected to ask myself what I needed, what I want. I had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together, who made sure everyone else was okay, but I had never stopped to think about what I needed, what I wanted out of life, out of my relationships, out of my family. And now I was left with nothing, no answers, no clarity, just the quiet realization that I had been living for everyone else, but never for myself. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, it all hit me at once like a tidal wave crashing over me. But in the midst of that pain, I also felt something else, something unexpected, a sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel it, the hurt, the anger, the sadness. I didn't try to push it away, didn't try to be strong for anyone else. I just let it wash over me, and in that moment, I finally felt alive again, and that in itself was a revelation. I was no longer willing to let my family's choices define me. I wasn't going to sit here waiting for them to come around, waiting for them to fix things. I had been waiting for a long time, and it had gotten me nowhere. I stood up, wiping away the tears that had fallen without my permission. The hospital call had thrown me off balance, but it had also given me the clarity I needed. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let the mistakes of others or the choices of my children steal my power. Charles was still here fighting his own battle, and I was going to fight mine. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to start living for myself. I took a deep breath and wiped my eyes. It was time to face the truth, and this time, I was going to do it on my own terms. I took a deep breath and wiped my eyes. It was time to face the truth, and this time, I was going to do it on my own terms. It was the quiet that struck me the hardest, not the absence of Charles. He was still there, barely hanging on. But the stillness of the house, the emptiness that felt so much more profound, now that the reality of his illness was fully upon us. It wasn't just the space between us and him. It was the space between me and my children. The days bled into one another, each one more painful than the last. Charles' condition worsened, his body growing weaker and more frail with each passing hour. I had known this was coming for months. I had been prepared, or at least I had told myself I was. But as the end neared, it became clear just how much I had been pretending. I had been pretending that everything would be okay, that my children would come around, that they would be here when it mattered, but they weren't. Emily's promises to visit, Daniel's assurances that he was doing everything he could, they were empty words now. No one was here, not when it counted. And that's when I asked myself, who do I blame? Do I blame them for their distance, for their absence, for their inability to be here when their father needed them the most? Or do I blame myself for thinking that they would ever come back to me the way I needed them to, for thinking that all those years of sacrifice would somehow earn me the right to their love and attention in this moment? I was standing by the window one afternoon, staring out at the world that seemed to be going on as if nothing had changed, when it hit me like a wave. An overwhelming flood of guilt and confusion. I had given everything I thought. I had given my life to them, to my family. And now at the end of it all, I was left alone to carry the burden of our past. The burden of their choices. How had I gotten here? I felt the weight of it, pressing down on my chest. The anger rising up in me. But there was something else too. Something darker. Something I had buried beneath all the years of giving. I had given so much of myself to them, to everyone, that I had forgotten to give to myself. I had lost me in the process. I couldn't let go of the resentment. Not yet. And yet as I looked at Charles, lying in that bed, barely aware of the world around him, I knew something had to change. I had to stop blaming them. I had to stop blaming myself, because blaming wouldn't bring anyone back. Blaming wouldn't fix what had already been broken. And then just as I thought I couldn't take another second of this emotional suffocation, the doorbell rang. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Who could it be? Could it be Charles? Doc? A nurse? I walked slowly to the door, each step heavy with the uncertainty of what lay on the other side. When I opened it, there they were, Emily and Daniel, standing on the porch, their faces filled with regret and exhaustion. They hadn't come before. They hadn't come when Charles was awake, when he was still the man he used to be. They hadn't come when I asked. But now, here they were. I didn't know what to say. The words were caught in my throat, stuck between anger and relief. I wanted to scream at them, to ask them why it had taken so long. I wanted to collapse into their arms, to tell them how much I had needed them. I wanted them to understand everything I had been carrying, the burden of trying to keep it all together while they had built their lives elsewhere. But I didn't do any of that. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, frozen, and let them walk in. Mom, Emily said softly, her voice shaky, we're so sorry. We should have been here. I didn't know how to handle it. I thought I had more time. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes full of guilt, his posture hunched as if carrying the weight of his own regrets. I'm sorry, Mom. I've been working so hard I didn't even think about what you were going through. But I should have been here. I should have done more. I looked at them, my heart breaking all over again. They didn't understand. They hadn't understood all the years I had sacrificed for them, for us. But something shifted in me. The anger, the resentment. It wasn't gone, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth was, we had all been carrying something. Charles's illness had fractured us all in different ways, and I had let my own bitterness grow unchecked. I stepped aside, letting them in. They had come when it was too late to save Charles, but maybe it wasn't too late to save us. Maybe we could still find a way to heal. Maybe after all these years, we could still find a way back to each other. I led them to the living room, where Charles lay. They stood there for a moment, just staring at him, their eyes filled with sadness and regret. I could feel their presence in the room, but it was different now. It wasn't just the children I had raised. It was two people who had been lost, and now they were trying to find their way back to the family we once were. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw them, really saw them. I saw the pain they had been carrying too. I saw how much they had tried to do, even if it wasn't enough. I saw how much they loved their father, even if they couldn't express it the way I needed them to. In that moment, something in me shifted. I wasn't ready to forgive everything. Not yet, but I wasn't angry anymore. I had spent so much time looking for something to blame, something to fix. But now, I realized that I didn't need to fix everything. I just needed to let it be. I looked at my children, standing there vulnerable, and I whispered, "It's not too late, we'll get through this, together." And for the first time in a long time, I believed. In the end, I realized that sometimes the people you give everything to are the same ones who leave you when you need them most. But that doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger. I've learned that true strength lies in standing up for yourself, even when no one else does. Here at RL's Circle, your story matters too. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more stories like this. And now tell me, how far would you go to help someone who's never been there for you? Do they owe you their loyalty, or is it time to walk away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.